Uh, I'm back. I better talk about TD, the darknesses now, because I have a school. Um, it's a Muslim school, a Islamic school, and I was going to give them a talk, but they are, in the month of Ramadan, they close early. And so the teachers are not going to have a chance to give me 10, 15 minutes to talk to their grade 10s to grade 12s about physics. So I'm rather going to make a video specifically about the darknesses and what it is. Okay. Um, First of all, I need to give you a very quick lowdown. I've done it in a previous video, but I'm just quickly going to talk about empirical study in science. This is a scientific thing, and physics is a science. It's called physical sciences. And it's based, the whole empirical way of studying something is it's something that was discovered by Islamic scholars, empirical study. And to study something empirically means to examine it in minute detail. And so, it was ironically, as with everything else, it was Western science that discovered the atom. And initially, they thought that that was the fundamental part or component of matter. But then, recently we've discovered that it's actually quarks. An atom consists of mostly three, sometimes two quarks. And now there's all kinds of other stuff. Electrons also consist of bits and pieces of these neutrinos and chinos and chocochinos and who knows what other names there are. But, it's not just studying something to find out empirically what it is in its smallest component part, but also when you're doing stuff, you must examine every empirical step in whatever it is that you're doing. That is also part and parcel of empirical study. Now, there are two ways of doing this, and I'm not so sure whether the Euro way, I like to call the one the Euro way and the other one the Islamic way, because that's basically what the world was all about, 1,000 years ago. It was about Europe versus Islam, and not just in terms of fighting and killing one another, but the academics on both sides exchange knowledge. I made a whole video about the Islamic scholars and the Christian scholars and how they, translated from Latin to Arabic, and the Christian scholars learned Arabic so that they could get their hands on all that knowledge. So their scientific method is based on the hypothesis and then statistic method. So it's probability, and there's lots of flaws in that. And that's why they are so misguided in their science. In addition, they box everything out. They box religion out of it, which also makes sense. I mean, I studied my BSc like that, and I could see that they didn't want. And if you looking at something and you studying it empirically, trying to see which variables interact with which variables and what's directly proportional and what's indirectly proportional, then you don't want to include the creator in that, because then sorry, because then somebody's just going to say God created that, so what's your problem? Don't you believe in God? I mean, don't they do that a lot? Well, they did it in my day, because in my day nobody was educated. So if you wanted to go and seek knowledge further, then they were like, science, you go to UCT and then you're going to become kafir. Yes, UCT teaches you to exclude God from it, but you must eventually, at a point, you must get to look outside of the box, and not stay inside the box. And this is what Western science does. It stays inside the box. And if you look in the Quran, you get a complete picture of the universe, and outside the universe is the domain of our Creator. But Western physics, for example, they only look at the Big Bang. And the Big Bang, like Big Bang, all on its own. It just went kabang. And then you had the universe. So that's all that they look at. And that's being short sighted because who did the Big Bang? Who created the plasma that they say was there? The fourth phase of matter was a hot plasma. And they measured these things, so that is evidence, but in science, besides studying something empirically, you must also have your evidence. That's why you do your experiments. And to get the evidence and you repeat it and you get the same result and then you prove it, there you go, you can do it another 50 times, you'll get the same result, and that's the evidence. So they proved that there was a big bang, they proved that there was hot gases, they proved that there was a plasma, but they didn't prove where it comes from. And you can't, because if you look in the Quran gives you the answer, and that's where the study of the darknesses comes from in the Quran. And sorry, and so that's how their empirical science is. Our empirical science is based on axiomatic proofs. So you take axioms and then you have proofs, and then from there you make inferences. So we use predicate logic. We don't use statistics, because statistics, it's iffy wiffy. And when you're talking iffy wiffy, like Einstein said, God doesn't play dice. Like if you roll it like that, what's going to happen if you do this? So statistics is probability, and probability, you are probably right and you are probably also wrong. That's why the West, if you also adopt a very cruel psyche, where you want to get the job done, you steal people's stuff, you kill, murder, plunder, and pillage, then you take people's stuff and you have a lot of money, and then you can just throw a lot of money at the problem and come up with a lot of stuff. You fight a huge world war, murder millions of people, and after the war, you just redirect all your factories. So, you make aeroplanes not to bomb and kill, but to fly commercially. You make cars and trucks and boats and ships, not and submarines, not to bomb and kill, but to do all those things commercially. Then obviously you're going to be the leaders of the world. But for how long? I mean, Russia fell by the wayside. After the Second World War, there was two superpowers, Russia and America. And Russia actually fought in the war. But Russia was communist and atheist, and they fell quickly in the 90s. The Afghans shot them with First World War rifles and beat them after 10 years. Then they split up. Then suddenly there wasn't a USSR anymore. There was a whole lot of countries that they had gobbled up at the end of the Second World War and covered in a whole mat. When we learned geography, we just learned USSR. Today, we can see a lot of these countries are actually Muslim countries. They speak a Turkic language. So the Ottoman Turks went in there and made all of them Muslim, taught them about Islam. The Americans was, of course, the other superpower, and they also fading now. They're lasting a little bit longer because they at least acknowledge God, like oh God. And there's a lot of Christian people in America, in spite of what the TV tells us. TV says a lot of lies. You go to America, there are Christian people, there's a whole Bible belt there. People go to church more than just on a Sunday, religious people. And so all this other woke stuff and all this perversion and things, it's not the USA. But the impression that people get is that that's what the USA is like. All my reminders going off. So just to repeat, their scientific method is hypothesis, experiments or research, and then statistics as a mathematical tool. Ours is axioms or truths, and then inferences, which is predicate logic. And the results are staggeringly different, the same but different. And in Islam, you're not supposed to be about money. So that is not our emphasis. Our emphasis is on knowledge and on truth. That we don't commercialize. You can't if you commercialize knowledge, then it becomes information. It's not knowledge anymore. If you do not believe in a heaven and hell, then you will not acquire knowledge, and your purpose in life is to get to heaven. That won't be your purpose. Your purpose would be to have heaven on earth, like luxury and indulgence and living the hedonistic lifestyle and all of that. But then also, you can't go the complete opposite direction, which is what a lot of Muslims in Cape Town did when I was growing up. They used to say things like, we'll take the akhirah and we give them the dunya. We'll take the afterlife and we'll give them, they can have the earth. I mean, that was like you giving up on your religion, because your deen is about the dunya also. You have to protect your women. You have to provide them with stuff. Women want stuff. And if you're the husband and the father, you must provide it. You can't not work and let your wife go work so you can live over her stuff. I mean, then she's looking after you. But that's what goes on here in Cape Town. And I'd go as far as saying Imam al-Ghazali was to blame for a lot of this. That is Sufi attitudes, where you only concentrate on matters of the heart and matters of the head, like philosophy and PhDs in physics and maths and computer science. That's nah, you don't concentrate on that. So you're giving people, and Imam Ghazali, he was a philosopher. He was in the PhD level. He actually made the continuity between Quran and Sunnah and the philosophical level of study. He made it continuous, like there was no dichotomy between the two. The two was perfectly smooth to go from Sufism all the way to philosophy. And I didn't know much about Sufism, and then I read about it and I studied it, and it made a lot of sense to me. It's a very emotional thing because it's to do with your heart and unveiling your heart and so on. And I consider myself to be a Sufi and a Faylasuf. A Faylasuf is the Arabic word for philosopher. And you can hear that the word philosopher came out of Faylasuf, because the Muslims were educated when the Christians were living in the Dark Ages. So they adopted the whole studying and that from the Muslims, in Spain for that matter, to be specific. First the Spanish and the Portuguese in the 1400s, and then the English and the French and the rest of Europe in the 1600s. And, it got to the point where they were just fighting amongst one another because they adopted knowledge, but they used their knowledge within their psyche, if you like, which was about plunder and pillage, starting with the Vikings. And, I mean, the Vikings thought up a battle axe. Who would think up an axe, a piece of heavy metal with blades on each side on a long pole so you can get leverage, and then you split somebody's skull with it? That's not how you... And they attacked, they never defended. They attacked England repeatedly, and, to cut a long story short, all those violent Viking genes is all there in Europe. And that's how the Europeans adopted knowledge, with that plunder and pillage mentality. And we brown people, we know exactly what that means. They plundered and pillaged Malaysia, and they built a commonwealth. The British was the best of all the plunders and pillages, and the French were like second best. Do you know that in the 1840 something, yeah, well, it wasn't long ago, they actually had a conference where all the European countries came together. They decided that they should stop fighting. We'd rather split Africa up into pieces. That's why Africa was, like Egypt there, and for England, and this is for France, and that's for Germany, and further down here this is for the Dutch, and that's for the Portuguese, and yeah, Mozambique, I think, yeah, and Namibia was for the Germans. They split up Africa into pieces. Like, this is a piece for you and a piece for me, so now we can stop fighting. The Congo went to Belgium, and I think they tested something on chimpanzees and left the disease there. I'm not sure, but I think it's AIDS. But anyway, we're talking about physics now. But these things are all within physics, and if you look, you'll see, you'll understand that everything is made of atoms. At least that's what science thought. But let's stick with atoms. We know that it's not the smallest particle of matter. It's actually quarks. But stick with atoms, okay? Because everybody has this understanding of an atom and a proton and an electron. And that's how you're going to learn physics, like that, because Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, Albert Einstein, they all, this brotherhood of physicists who stick with that model, you know. So, I mean, the atom and the electron is nothing like the picture that we have, like it's the Earth with moons going around it, with a hydrogen atom has one electron going around it. So that's like the Earth and the electron go. It's nothing like that. But you know, when you're learning the basics of stuff, then you have to learn it in a way where you can picture it. You know, so you're going to learn that in physics. So just learn it like that. But just remember that you don't learn something and then that's it. That's how it is. You must learn perpetually. You must keep on learning. And so if physics is about everything, then you need to keep on learning physics and keep on learning what it's about. It will put you at a higher, and it will give you a higher level and give you a bigger picture of what the universe is all about. And that's why I say that Europhysics is short-sighted, because they only look at the universe and they don't look outside the universe. And in the Quran, it says that there was just Nurullah. It was just there. It wasn't created. It wasn't begotten. It didn't beget anything. It was just there. But you must also understand that in the same context that there was also no time. There's no concept of time. So you can't ask when and where. There was also no understanding then. Before the universe was created, there was only Nurullah. There was the darknesses, plural. You know, in the Quran, Allah says, Zulumat. And Zulum is singular. Zulumat is plural. That's why I call it the darknesses, because it translated to English, it's plural. And the plural of darkness is darknesses. And so I initial it like TD, the darknesses. Then there was also water, which was created. And today we know from physics that water is created from hydrogen and oxygen. Everybody knows H2O. And on the water was Arshullah, the Arsh, or the throne of Allah. And my research shows that that's all that there was. Nothing. There was no universe, nothing. Then Allah Ta'ala, He wanted to be known. This is Allah's words in the Quran. And I say He, but you know, it's not He. We should rather just say Allah wanted to be known. And Allah then said, Kun fayakun, be, and it is, and a plasma formed. And the plasma, Allah questioned, will you bow down to me in submission? And the answer was yes. Then this plasma like smoke, when Allah said kun fayakun, then a plasma like smoke formed. And physicists acknowledge that there's a fourth form of matter which they call plasma. It's not liquid, it's not gas, and it's not solid. It's plasma. So then this plasma was cleft asunder, is the English translation of what happened. Now, that's the Big Bang. And the Big Bang is described like it's a sword that cleft it asunder. You know, like probably the flat side, you know, like splat, and there it goes. And it created a lot of heat, and, you know, there was nothing in the beginning. And in this universe was also light, and there was also the darknesses in there also. But this light and this darknesses was created because Allah said kun fayakun, and the plasma appeared. So people were also created, so Darwin's theory, if you read on the origin, and it's not the origin of species, it's on the origin of species. He was commenting on the origin of species. He didn't say that species originated like from nothing, from a soup and all that nonsense that they talk about. They don't acknowledge our creator. That's why they have to spend, waste time and money trying to figure out a whole lot of nonsense. It's not necessary. The answers are there. I mean, the Bible gives them the answers, but they don't want to, they say, they look for excuses. So they say, wars killed people and people kill in the name of wars and all of that so that they can remain short-sighted. They look inside the universe and they can study everything inside the universe, but they only study the stuff that they can see, the light, the stars, the galaxies, the solid stuff like the satellites going around all the planets, and they study what is falling stars, meteors, and all those because they can see it. And according to their own calculation, that only forms 4.7% of everything out there. And they couldn't understand it, so they said, okay, like 10 years ago, they said, well, then the dark stuff that we can see the darkness, but that obviously has where the other mass comes from, like 95.3% of the mass. So they studying nothing. If I had to mark their work, I'd give them 4.7%, give them the benefit of the doubt. Imagine that everything that they studied is right, so then they must get 4.7%. And in psychology, if your knowledge is only 4.7% and your IQ is in that area, then you're an idiot. That's a psychological term. If your IQ is 30, then your description is a moron. And if it's 40, then you're an imbecile. Obviously, if it's go higher, then you're like a genius, like Einstein and all of that. But that's where they all sit because they only study stuff that they can see. And it's to be understood because people don't want to be associated with the darkness. Like dark is bad and it's evil and light is good. Because in Islam and in Christianity, the Bible and the Quran exhorts Muslims and Christians to bring people out of the darkness into the light of Christianity in the Bible and into the light of Islam. In the Quran, it actually says so. It talks about bringing people out of the darknesses into the light of Islam. But not every reference to darknesses in Al-Quran al-Karim is about that, is about good and bad, where darknesses is bad and nur is light, which is good. My name is Anwar, and my name, with Arabic, you have totally different meanings of words depending on the context. So my name means graceful in one context. In another context, it means nur, light. And in a higher context, like I consider myself to be more than just a Muslim. If you do if you conform to the 5 principles of Islam, then you are a Muslim. Like when people revert to Islam, then they say he's a Muslim. He's not a Muslim. He's starting out as a Muslim because he must learn his Shahada, he must learn his Salah, he must learn his to fast, he must learn to pay zakah if he qualifies, and he must make a niyyah at least to go on Hajj. Then he's Muslim. But if you've been doing that for donkey's years and you're on a higher level of knowledge and all of that, then you're a mu'min, which is what I consider myself to be. And nobody's going to tell me I'm a mu'min because they're stupid, man. They if you learn too much and they say you're far gone, you're too far gone. And if you talk to them about like nuances about wudu, for example, about the fard of wudu and the sunnah, they don't know these things. They say that's bid'ah because they learned everything. You wash your hands, your mouth, your nose, your face. And you say, do you know you don't actually have to wash your hands, your mouth, your nose? You can start with your face only. because your face is far, but your hands, your mouth, and your nose is sunnah. That's what's it word again? Innovation. What's it? Then I say innovation. Are you saying it's bid'ah? That's a word I'm looking for. That's a word. You're talking bid'ah. You're too far gone. That's the kind of thing. And they don't want to learn, they don't want to increase their knowledge. What they learned in primary school is enough. That's it. It's done. I can do everything I need to do, and I don't need to learn anymore. But I also don't need to listen to anybody else because they talk a lot of nonsense. That's the kind of thing that you're dealing with, and that is the reason why Muslims are in such a state here in South Africa. They're all drug addicts, they're all daggakoppe. But the youth, and I hope a lot of young people are watching this, because I intend to issue my own diploma in physics. I've got a PhD on the darknesses. Obviously, the Euros are not going to accept it easily, although there is somebody called David Bohm. You can Google him. He was a physicist. He died in 1994. And he said that the void is not the void. All the Muslim scholars back then, all of them, the ones who studied physics, said that there can't be such a thing as nothing. You don't get nothing. The Quran says the darknesses, and the Quran says it's in layer upon layer. That's physics. Allah didn't expect us to take people out of darknesses and layer them on top of one another. It doesn't say that. It says that the darknesses, al-dhulumat, is in layer upon layer. It says the darknesses comes in wave upon wave. Now, do you know that recently at LIDO, Lido, the Europhysics, they built a device to measure things on the nanoscale, 10 to the minus 9. I mean, that's really small. And they detected a wave. They built a massive thing, like one arm 4 kilometers long, and another arm 90 degrees to the other one, also 4 kilometers long. And they shone lasers down there, like precision, accurate lasers. And they detected movements of the lasers with respect to one another on the nanoscale. This is what these owns are building. And they allocated that movement to the clash of two black holes. And, my thesis is that gravitational waves are actually waves in the darknesses, because they said it goes right through everybody. It went right through the earth. It goes right through us. Now, ask yourself, that black stuff that you look up at the sky, during the day it's blue because of optical illusion related to the atmosphere and the ocean. Now, if you go out of the atmosphere, it will be dark like it is at night. There's no sun, so there's no reflection of sunlight. So then you see black. That's the darknesses. They call it dark matter. They just gave the extra mass to dark matter, and they said, okay, there, it's there, done and dusted, we finished. They must study dark matter, and then they'll get 95.3% more knowledge about the universe. And that's what I did. I'm studying it, and I've got a whole thesis on it. If you do that, you can answer questions about, quantum physics. You're going to learn about quantum physics, the physics of the atom. Then you're going to learn about Newtonian physics, and you're going to learn that the two are very different. They can't tie the two up. I can. I tied it together. I explain black holes. They look at light only. But in the Quran, it says that, listen carefully, the light, when the sun rises in the morning for Fajr, the light covers up the darknesses. Now that tells you that the darknesses is still there. The light is just covering it up. And it keeps covering it up the whole day because the sunlight is there the whole day. And at night, when the light of the sun stops replenishing and covering up the darknesses, then the darknesses comes up and the darknesses shows. You see, so that's how you must picture everywhere. Darkness is everywhere. And you get places in outer space where it's just pitch black dark because there's no light there. There's no star nearby. Our sun is a star. So in the mornings, After when the Subuh Sadiq, when the sun starts coming up, then the darknesses starts covering up the light. The darkness doesn't go away. It says in the Quran, it's an axiom, it's a truth. The darknesses gets covered up. But now they look, when they look, they only look when the light is shining. So when things happen in the darknesses, they say it's happening in the light. Like E equals mc squared, it's a conversion of energy to matter. Now they worked it the other way around, right? They took a hydrogen atom, matter, and they converted it to energy, because they wanted to make a big kabang, because that's what their mentality is like. They fought against the Japanese, and then they bombed them with a hydrogen bomb. They murdered millions of Japanese in Hiroshima. And then they made another one with plutonium, which is a bigger atom, but it's radioactive, so it decays quicker than a normal atom. They made a plutonium bomb, which is a bigger bang, and they bombed Nagasaki, millions more, and then still radiation and all those things. So these Americans that you look up to, I'm not saying you mustn't look up to Americans, because there are lots of Muslims in America, a lot of good Muslims in America. There are a lot of good Christians in America also. It's normally the politicians and the warmongers, the ones who make mischief on earth. They're the ones who give everybody a bad name. Like that bad O in your class. There's only one in the class, but he gives the whole class a bad name. And then everybody in the class are all good people and quietly going about doing good, helping others and contributing to the human body of knowledge. And I hope you physicists all grow up to do just that. That is your purpose, is knowledge. Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Seek knowledge from here unto the furthest place. Travel. I've traveled all over the world, and I've traveled on my own. I've traveled when I wanted to, with my own money. I don't live in a fancy house, and I have a crook of a car. It's got like funny parts on it. You recognize it very quickly, because it doesn't interest me living in a. I'm busy building my palace in Jannah one day, inshallah. Where I will meet up with those who have passed before me. Sorry, man. You see, that is the Sufi part in me. Your heart and your feelings just kick in uncontrollably. And that's another thing that the Europhysicists lose out on. They're out of touch with their heart. They covered up. They imagine that they must be the strong person, and emotion is a sign of weakness, and all of that. It's all, I don't know why they're like that. They're heartless. And they are really heartless. They have a heart, but they are heartless. They fire you, they don't care. And they destroy your family, you don't have a job. They're not bothered. That's what it was like under apartheid. You make one mistake, you're out, boy. Now they can't do that anymore, because the New South Africa, that's at least one of the advantages of working in the New South Africa. You take them to court and then give your job back. Couldn't tell me. But now the flip side is now people don't do their job because they can't get fired. See, that is human nature. People are, it's because they're not brought up properly, man. If you are brought up with a work ethic, then you will just work. You won't work for money. You will work to make the people that you are working for happy, to help them, because you're providing a product or a service, and you want to make sure your product is of good quality and not do it for the money. And you will make sure that your service is of good quality. You're not just doing it for the money. But things are not like that nowadays. Like there's like a runaway wheel that's on fire, and it's the global economy, and it's out of control. And like all the currencies are worthless. In Zimbabwe, they walked around with wheelbarrows full of money to buy a loaf of bread, and we heading that way here in South Africa. I'm preparing myself to move out of here. I'm gonna cut off ties with South Africa. I'm gonna come here maybe maximum 5 months for the year, but I'm gonna be based. My biggest problem is, how is when you make Musafir Salah, then you make short and Qasr Salah. You pray 2 rakats instead of 4. Now I need to rework out what is my home base, so I know when I'm in a like 77, 80 kilometers away. At the moment, it's South Africa. But yeah, I need to rethink that. But I'll do that when time arises, which inshallah will be this year sometime. So if you look at the darknesses, it doesn't only exist in outer space, right? And by the way, you also learn in physics that light consists of red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet, those colors, right? And you can break it up with a prism into those colors. So where's black? Now they teach you that black is when all the colors are absorbed, right? So that's why you're seeing black. But that is going back to before the time of Ibn al-Haytham. Because before Ibn al-Haytham came about, the Islamic scholar, like 1,000 years ago, people believed that your eyes emitted some kind of ray, so that's why you can see the moon. Because your eyes, the ray hits the moon and then you can see it. Ibn al-Haytham said, no, man, it's the other way around. You know, the light goes into your eye, and he proved it with his camera, the dark room that he built. He made a pinhole, and then he showed the image forming inside the dark room. That is the start of a camera. And he showed that it's the light that comes in, and so it goes into your eye. So you can't see darkness if it doesn't go into your eye. When you see black, if you look around you, all the black that you're seeing, it's a color that goes into your eye. It must go on your retina, and it must go onto your optic nerve into your brain for you to see black. See black. Your brain interprets it as black. You can't see something if nothing goes into your eye. Your eye is an organ that was created to see the electromagnetic spectrum, which we call light. We can't see X-rays and, sorry, all those gamma rays and that kind of stuff, but it's there. But our eyes are not built to see that. Just like our eyes are not built to see the waves in the Zulumat. It's too small. It goes right through our bodies, right through the wall. You know, an Italian scientist built a mercury device where he took a tube of mercury and immersed it in a bowl of mercury. And it sank down. And so he said that's now 1 atmospheric pressure, because it's the atmosphere that's pressing it down. Okay, good and well. That's how we measure barometric pressure up until today. But also, that top part where the mercury fell down, they say that is a void, a perfect void. There's absolutely nothing in there. The darkness is in there. The light is covering it up, so you can see that there's nothing in there, but you're seeing light in there. Right? So already, how can you say there's nothing in there when there's light in there? You have to see light from there to come into your eye to see it. So there's light in there. But there's also darknesses in there. Just like in outer space where there's light near. Because the darknesses is at 10 to the minus 9. You know, that's how, in fact, I actually think darknesses operates on the nano scale, 10 to the minus 18. But then it must surface here on the 10 to the minus 9 because it was detected by that LIDAR machine that I spoke about on the 10 to the minus 9 on the nanoscale. And that goes right through the test tube, right through, and then it's there. You know, so if it goes through the earth and through our body, then it must go through the test tube also. So there's a lot of stuff in the darknesses, and you know, you can explain the creation of matter. You know, Michael Faraday was a Christian. He said, God does all these things, but I want to know how he does it. So we must do that. We must say, God does all these things, you know, in the darknesses. You can't go invent an electric motor again. Faraday already did that. And look how advanced we are today with electricity generation and the electric motor. If you reverse it, then you get the electric motor. And all the cars, scooters, buses, and everything is becoming electric nowadays. Michael Faraday, look it up. YouTube it, Google it. I mean, he's more of a genius than Albert Einstein if you look at his impact on society. I mean, with Einstein, we have nuclear reactors generating electricity, but then it goes to a Faraday machine, huge Faraday machines that turn and generate electricity on a massive scale. So with my physics, I have a new physics, but I also have an implement, same as Faraday, and it's called the electric motor. So it's a light motor, sorry, it's called a light motor, but it's based on the same electric motor. You know, if you do physics and you will see, I mean, you learn your physics well and look into it empirically, you will see Faraday believed that there was a relationship between a magnet and electricity. And he found it. He found the relationship. That's why there's an electric motor and electricity generated today, because he found the relationship by accident in his lectures. You know, he just actually noticed that the needle just went like click while he was leaving the lecture. And then he got a shock, you know. A lot of stuff was found by accident. So I need that. I need to get a relationship between the darknesses and light. Nur wal dhulumat. And, you know, it's on a tiny scale, man. And I can't leave it. I won't leave it to somebody else to multiply it up to a big enough scale where it can propel stuff through space. You know, I mean, Elon Musk is taking a whole lot of fuel with him to go and pollute the whole. The orbit around Earth is already polluted, massively polluted. That he's going to pollute the moon, he's going to pollute Mars, he's going to pollute all the way to Mars because he wants petrol stations all the way there. And he's going to spend, what, $1 trillion. Do you know that if you must spend $1 every second, you'll be 3,600 years old by the time you've spent $1 trillion? Nahi akal ki baat hai. You know, they don't understand what they're doing. They overkill. They just want to. Imagine how many people you can help with $1 trillion. You know, but they don't care because they're like 5% of the people that have billions and millions and trillions. And, you know, 95% of the people don't know where their food is going to come from tomorrow. I mean, you can't just study physics and get a job for yourself and then, you know, get a car loan and a house loan and you're clever, you know, and so you get a quiet job. Like a typical brown person. That's what we do. That's what I did. You know, I studied at UCT and I became a lecturer in computer science. And I was helping poor people and, you know, education before liberation. And I had a quiet job. I had a housing loan. I could go on holiday with my sons to go let them visit their mother's family every year. For the last 40 years, we've been doing that. And I mean, you're supposed to maintain relations with your family, never mind what they do. And I got a very good relationship with my in-laws. My family knows I get on better with my in-laws than with them. Okay, not both of them, but more like I get on very well with my mother's family, you know, because I tend to be like weirdly religious to them. And my mother's family is weirdly religious, but my father's family, not so sure. Although I have one cousin who was like the imam in our family on our father's side, but he was too Sufi. He was an actual Sufi. He introduced me to Sufism. And it opened up a lot in me and it opened up a lot of understanding in me. And you know, if you understand physics, then you are a person of understanding. And Allah says in the Quran, for those of understanding, you know, so it's not, knowledge is not for everybody. You know, people have their own opinions, they talk about all kinds of stuff, but they're not qualified to talk about it. Everybody is a psychologist today, but they didn't even do psychology 101. You know, but they want to talk about, oh, you know, you must understand, he was abused as a child, and that's why he's an ex-murderer. You know, so he must get life for murdering 15 people, but he must come out after 15 years because life is actually 15 years. You know, we don't make any sense at all. Well, I mean, how can life means for his life, or he must take his life because he took a life. That is how it works in Islam. In Islam, in Saudi Arabia, there's a square where they cut your head off with a sword. You want to murder somebody? Then you are killed. Your life is taken. A life for a life. That is how it works. And you steal, your finger gets cut off. I was in Saudi on Hajj. I was in Saudi on Umrah after that. In 2018, 2011, I went on Hajj. I never saw one single person with no finger or no hand. They don't have to do it because people are too scared to steal. You leave your stuff there and nobody steals it. They don't touch it because it's not theirs. Why must you touch stuff if it's not yours? The stuff that goes in Qatar, where I come from, I just came home for Ramadan. I forgot my sketches in a sketches bag in the mall. I had lunch and I forgot my sketches there. I was almost on a subway which comes right into the mall when I remembered I'm supposed to be carrying a carrier bag. I took a slow walk back because I knew it will be there, and it was there. The cleaner was busy cleaning right next to the stuff. Where will that happen here? They drive their scooters and it stops right there by the subway. Then they get on the subway, they go to work the whole day, they come back tonight, they ride their scooter home. Electric scooters. The same people that would steal that scooters in Bangladesh ride scooters here. They can afford to buy these scooters. They drive fancy SUVs. They live in beautiful apartments or free trams, 2 real metro trains, free buses, all put up for them by the Qataris. There are 360,000 Qataris in Qatar, and there are 2.77 million foreigners. And they cater for them. Those people don't want to go home. So study your physics hard. I'm going to make some more programs on the darknesses. So give me a like and a follow so you can keep up with both physics. I mean, you have to learn the physics as it is. You will be examined on it. And, it gives you a good basis on what there is out there because the stuff is right. It's just the stuff that they leave out, and so you have to fill it in on your own. You must learn all the physics and then learn about the missing physics that's in the Quran. So it's factual, it's true, and you must learn about it. Ameko.